Marches to reject Keiko Fujimori's presidential campaign are taking place in Peru, and Honduras' two security forces under scrutiny after an assassination is traced back to the police. My name is Reagan. Vignes. This is From the South, and thank you so much for joining us. We begin in Peru, where protests are underway right now, marking the 24th anniversary of Alberto Fujimori's coup. Protesters are rejecting his daughter Keiko's presidential campaign. And the latest polls ahead of the Peruvian election show a surge in the popularity of leftist candidate Veronica Mendoza. Although Keiko Fujimori has consolidated her lead, the second place is being disputed by right-wing Pedro Pablo Kuczynski and Mendoza, both tied with almost 15% of the vote. Under the current scenario, Kuczynski or Mendoza would face Fujimori on a runoff vote, meaning that both candidates will need to ally with other parties to beat Fujimori. And a scandal is looming in Honduras as investigations unveil the police involved in the assassination of a prosecutor. The military raided the police headquarters as investigations have also linked the police to the assassination of a drug czar and one of his advisors. The assassinations took place in 2009, 2011 and 2013. It's still unclear whether the police acted on their own or if there was coordination with hitmen or criminal gangs to carry out the murders. The new revelations have caused the police leadership to begin a set of reforms. And policemen clashed with members of the indigenous organizations Copenhagen after protests took place outside the office of the Attorney General in Tegucigalpa. The Copenhagen members and other activists were demanding justice in the case surrounding the murder of Berta Cáceres, but police stopped them when they tried to hang a banner with her face. Unidentified individuals then threw rocks at the building. President Juan Manuel Santos is touring Central America to gather support in the fight against drug trafficking. The president arrived in Guatemala, where he met with President Jimmy Morales. Santos will then visit Honduras and El Salvador to further coordinate strategies in the fight against drugs. President Santos also responded to critics of the FARC peace deal. The president explained that amnesty will not take place under the current agreement.
All these crimes won't be granted amnesty, but will instead be judged and sanctioned by a new jurisdiction we have created.
President Dilma Rousseff has announced that she will reshuffle her cabinet after the impeachment vote in the lower house. Rousseff's announcement comes after the PMDB party left the governing coalition with the Workers' Party. Vice President Michel Temer and Chief Minister Lula da Silva have protagonized heat accusations in the media. Experts believe Rousseff lowered the profile of PMDB ministers. Brazilian Vice President Michel Temer has announced that he will step aside as the head of the Brazilian Democratic Movement Party. The PMDB withdrew from the ruling coalition last week. The Vice President's decision comes as the Supreme Court is investigating an impeachment process opened against Temer. A day after the release of the Panama Papers, which documented a massive tax evasion scheme used by the wealthiest people on earth, Argentine President Mauricio Macri has denied any wrongdoing. Although he was expected to speak today during a press conference, 3 of his ministers spoke on his behalf, claiming that Macri's participation in offshore societies was within the law. Meanwhile, in Panama, the government has begun an official investigation into the Mossack Fonseca law firm. The firm at the center of the Panama Papers created thousands of offshore societies in tax havens to help their clients dodge their country's regulations. The firm issued a statement earlier today claiming that some of the leaked documents were false and that it would challenge the journalists publishing the story for unlawful stealing of information. However, the Panamanian president welcomed the leaks and said that his government was committed to tackling tax evasion. U.S. President Barack Obama has reacted to revelations of some 200 U.S. citizens in the Panama Papers. Obama spoke during a press conference at the White House, and he promised that he would tackle tax evasion by launching a tax reform. So far, the names of all the U.S. citizens involved in the tax scheme have not been disclosed.
That can be the story for the next several.
Iceland's prime minister has resigned after the Panama Papers showed he and his wife had an offshore firm in 2007. He is the first political victim of the scandal. British Prime Minister David Cameron was under fresh pressure today after Downing Street was forced to deny that he owns any shares offshore. Pressure grew on the Prime Minister to disclose additional information about his personal finances. This is because the leaked Panama documents revealed that his father had been using a law firm to avoid tax. As a result, opposition Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn called for an investigation into the claims.
Publication of the Panama Papers drives home what more and more people feel. Quite simply, it's this: there's one rule for the rich and one rule for everybody else. And it's therefore high time that we got tough on tax havens.
The EU-Turkey deal to repatriate refugees and migrants to Turkey began on Monday. Human rights organizations have expressed concern on how they're being treated. Human Rights Watch is on Lesbos Island in Greece to monitor and observe the process, but say that they have not been allowed to speak to refugees. According to the NGO, the refugees are being treated inhumanely.
EU and Greece is doing something really disturbing and illegal, and they're just treating refugees as human trash, which should be just cleaned away, and this is a tragic development.
Protests over the proposed labour reforms continue in France. There were protests in several provinces in France, including Marseille and Rennes, among others. The World Health Organization says an investigation will determine if there is a link between Ebola flare-ups in Liberia and Guinea.
Liberia has also reported now 2 confirmed cases of Ebola. In Guinea, there were 9 confirmed cases. 8 of those cases died. Now the investigation is going to determine whether there is a link between those 2 flare-ups. It is understood that there was a person who was traveling from Guinea to Liberia and who has tested positive.
Russia's defense ministry released a video showing them clearing mines on the outskirts of the Syrian city of Palmyra. The city was recaptured by the forces of President Bashar al-Assad on March 27th. Russia's defense ministry estimates that they will have to demine over 180 hectares of territory. After 4 days of intense fighting, Azerbaijan and Armenia have halted hostilities between them. It has been the worst violence for decades, where 46 people were killed in 3 days of fighting. The region of Nagorno-Karabakh has been in dispute since the collapse of the Soviet Union back in 1991. Israel has expanded its fishing zone off parts of the coast of Gaza Strip to 9 miles. More with Noah Harazin.
Gazan fishermen will now be able to sail within 9 nautical miles from Gaza's valley southward. Israel's decision to expand the fishing zone off parts of the coast of the Gaza Strip took effect Sunday afternoon. Official sources at the Palestinian Civil Ministry confirmed that the agreement reached with the Israeli authorities allows also the entry of the maintenance materials needed to repair the fishing equipment, in many cases damaged by Israeli naval forces themselves.
We were very happy that we could sail within 9 nautical miles, but things are still difficult. We were surrounded in one place, boats were very close from each other, and there was not enough space for good fishing. There wasn't much fish also. We hope the fishing zone expands to 12 nautical miles so that we can catch more fish and improve the deteriorating economic situation.
Under the Oslo agreements in 1990s, the fishing range was set to be 20 nautical miles. Over the years, Israel reduced this range, severely damaging the livelihood of thousands of fishermen who mainly depend on this business, since most of the fish is found over that limit. Since 2006, Israeli authorities had allowed fishermen in the besieged strip to operate within a 4 nautical miles limit, citing security reasons. Nonetheless, they were continuous targets for its naval forces. Only last year, the Palestinian Center for Human Rights reported about 139 violations by the Israeli Navy against Gazan fishermen within the allowed fishing zone. The violations included killing 3 fishermen, wounding dozens, and damaging at least 16 boats. The fishing limit was expanded later to 6 nautical miles after a ceasefire agreement between Israel and the Palestinian militant factions in the Gaza Strip ended a 51-day fightings between the two sides in the summer of 2014. Today's 9-mile limit is still far from the 20-mile limit agreed in Oslo. Noor Harazin, teleSur's TV, Gaza.
The Panama Papers leak has cast light on the financial arrangements of high-profile politicians and public figures. Among those named include high-profile people in sports. One of the biggest soccer figures named in the documents is Michel Platini, who is a key figure in the 2015 FIFA scandal. Other high-profile sports personalities include Lionel Messi and Jerome Valk. Messi's family has denied any involvement in the tax evasion scheme, while Platini's lawyer says his account was declared to Swiss authorities. Despite an overall slowdown in the art market, a painting was sold for nearly $35 million. The painting was created by Chinese artist Zhang Daqian and was sold at an auction, making it the most lucrative piece sold from the artist. Zhang, who died back in 1983, is widely considered one of the greatest in Chinese painting. For more on these and other stories, you can visit our website, telesurtv.net/English, or you can join us as well on Instagram, Facebook, and on Twitter. Have a good evening. Bye.